You're listening to LA40 with Katerina Cozias, only on LA Talk Radio.
All right, good morning, LA. We are back. You're watching LA40. We're here in studio live in Los Angeles, LA Talk Radio, and it is Thursday, November officially. Where the heck did this year go?
I can't even imagine.
I don't know where the year has gone. I'm Katerina Cozias. I'm your host, and I am joined in studio today by Dr. Angelica Hernandez. Now, many of you may remember Dr. Angelica from some past episodes. She's a developmental psychologist. She is also an abuse survivor and a child advocate for prevention of further abuse. We have Angelica in the studio today because Hollywood has been buzzing, Angelica, with real buzzing with all of this fallout from the, I guess it's basically an opening of the floodgates with the Harvey Weinsteins and the Bill O'Reillys and the Brett Ratners and the, now Kevin Spacey's, and it seems like these layers are being peeled open and peeled open and peeled open. So I wanted to have you in studio today to chat about not so much the pop culture element of it,
yes,
because we can all Google, we can all get onto Entertainment Tonight or E! News or whatever we're watching to get the latest. But what I want to delve into today, especially for our audience, is people that are living life a little bit later in their 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s, that may have been victims of sexual abuse or sexual predation, if you will, or have been, hit up with harassment. Does that lessen that shame, that guilt, those feelings? Do they lessen over time, or do we harbor them? So what I'd love for you to do is chat with us about that. But before we do, you have a very personal story coming from your own background that you've been pretty vocal about. It was never a secret, but you've been very gracious and courageous and authentic in bringing it to light, especially with what's been going on the last 2 weeks. So can you share with us a little bit about your story, and that'll help frame where your expertise is coming from?
Excellent. Yes, that's a great question. Well, first of all, I've been doing this work for well over 20 years. I've been writing about, talking about, and creating art about being a survivor of sexual trauma. I am also a survivor of incest. I'm also a survivor of stranger rape, which means I didn't know the person at all. Most of the other situations were someone that we knew. My mother knew, my brothers knew. It was someone close to us. So that has been my experience. And when I was 14 years old, 1984, a long, long time ago, that was when things started to kind of come in the form of flashbacks of me remembering what had happened and remembering the intensity of all the emotions that came with being a survivor.
So at 14 you started having flashbacks, which means you were actually victimized even younger than that?
Oh yes, that's a good point to start, to start. So it started with a molestation from one of my brothers who would give me a bath, and then it progressed from there, and that was at age 2. He actually raped me at age 5. So he was the first person in my experience who did this to me, and I really believed that this is what happens to girls. And from then on, then every other perpetrator just took the reins. And
how much older was your brother?
8 years older.
8 years older.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So most of all the perpetrators were all older than I was. I was a child, like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old for most all of it. And then the last assault was when I was 18 years old in the United States Marine Corps.
Wow.
So
even in the Marine Corps, you were abused.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't anticipate that I was joining the United States Marine Corps for that. In fact, I thought it was some sort of escape for me. It was like walking into some structure and order and
or you had hoped it would be.
Predictability.
Right.
Yes, and what ended up happening is that the culture in that time in the 1980s, and I imagine it still exists, was very predatory, unfortunately, on women. And if you are familiar with the military, there are less women in the Marine Corps than the other services. So
do you think it's more prevalent in the Marine Corps then?
no, it is prevalent, as we are finding out everywhere we go. It at the grocery store, you can take a tally of how many baggers or cashiers have been sexually harassed. Whether it's at the doctor's office. I mean, the truth is that it was just more blatant, I think, in the military than it was in civilian life.
Sure. Now, that was in the military. You were 18 years old, but I want to take it back again to when you were a little bit younger. Your parents, were they around? Were they aware of this? Where were they?
Great question.
Because that's always the question: is where were the parents?
Exactly. I was born to a single mother. She was 43 when she had me, so she was already older, like a viejita for all those Spanish speakers out there. And
43 back then was a little bit
that's
old,
right.
right?
This is LA40.
Yeah, I was going to say no, but now we're cool and young. But she was a mom.
The
right?
40s
Classic.
are the new 20s.
Sure,
yes.
Okay.
No, but in that time, I mean, it was the 1970s. She wore little babushka, polyester pants. Like she was old, and she was always going to church and praying for us to have a better life. We lived in the poverty. We were kind of transient. And she was going to church to pray for us. And while she was praying for us, she left me vulnerable to these men. And I don't know that she had the capacity, and this is not a slight on her, but that she had the capacity or the attunement. It's like she just didn't have that skill. She didn't have that muscle to be mama bear.
Okay. So do you think she was aware of it and just didn't want to deal with the messiness?
No.
Or do you think
really
she was
think
just
she was oblivious to it.
Interesting.
I think that it didn't cross her consciousness. I think that she may have been a survivor herself, and those that reality was so well hidden and protected in her that it actually stunted her emotional growth.
Wow.
She ultimately was diagnosed at 70 with bipolar disorder, which I knew all my life something was wrong, but I believe that the secrecy, and that's the toxicity of holding on to this stuff, really stunted her emotionally because she just couldn't be the attuned mother we all desperately need. And I didn't have a father. I didn't know him. I didn't know of him until I was a teenager, and so that was not an option.
Did you blame his not being around? Were you ever angry with his image because he wasn't there to protect you?
You know what?
I mean, how much anger did you harbor at some point? Because I know you now, and you have miraculously managed not only to move past it, but you have become so empowered with your own message and vision to help make sure this never happens again. How do you make that shift? Because I know there's a lot of angry people out there that are harboring these feelings.
Here's the thing. So, and it's sad, but it was my thought process. I just assumed I was better off without having a father, because then that would have been just another perpetrator.
Wow.
So it didn't even dawn on me to miss him. It didn't dawn on me to want a father. It didn't dawn on me that I was missing anything. I felt like I was lucky that I didn't have to add him to this list.
Wow.
Of
So
predators.
you were quite tainted then by well, how could you not?
How do you
be?
not?
Right.
Like, your whole experience is violence,
Absolutely.
personal violence and emotional violence, terrorism. Really.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you call emotional terrorism.
Right.
Is that you are so afraid to even breathe too heavily or in any way show distress. And I was good at that. I just kept quiet. I didn't cry. I didn't need anyone, or at least out loud pretend to need anyone. I just held on to everything and just swallowed it until I couldn't.
And so you couldn't. Did you go to therapy? Did you break down?
I had a breakdown. You know, actually, I had the pleasure of running into Ted Danson
Okay.
At a restaurant, and I just felt this compulsion to go up to him and say, "Hello, Ted, sir." And this was a couple months ago, actually.
Oh, this is recent.
This is very, very
Okay.
recently. So I felt awkward, but I was like, you know what? You have to say thank you to those people that inspired you. You have to say
Right.
thank you and pay homage to people that did something, you know?
What'd you say to him?
And so I went up to him and I said, "Hey, you probably don't know this, but I don't know if you remember that movie. It was called Something About Amelia, and it was 1984. I was 14. I was babysitting a neighbor's son, and I watched this movie, and it was about Ted Danson being a child abuser. He was abusing, I don't know if it was his daughter or his stepdaughter, but I remember it was called Something About Amelia, which there was something, but nobody could really pinpoint what that is. And the more aware and attuned we are, you can see that this child was under duress, but you couldn't figure out what it was while she was being abused by her father or stepfather. And I just remember the way she looked was the way I felt inside. And then it just like, everything blew over.
How did you feel? What were
I felt, first of all, I didn't know the word incest. And I remember at that time, 1984, I would look it up. It was like in the dictionary, and it was maybe in some, anthropological books, but it wasn't a conversation piece.
Right,
It
yeah,
wasn't
right.
in-
You don't
in
throw that
popular
around,
media.
on the bus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then everything just came crashing down, and it really was, it was my first experience with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, where I felt hunted and haunted by these images and by these experiences, and this idea that my brother, the perpetrator brother, just squelched me. And when I realized what that was, I was enraged.
Now, you mentioned the perpetrator brother, so you have more brothers? How
I
many siblings do you
have 4 brothers.
Okay.
One
You
brother.
have 4 brothers, and none of them stood up to him all those years?
This guy is one of those people who are evil and has such aggression that nobody would misstep.
Huh.
Not even my mother. So my mother didn't understand the gravity, or she said, of what was happening in the house, but he controlled our home with an iron fist. There was no father. My oldest brother had gone away to the Air Force. He got the hell out of Dodge, or in this case, East LA. And so we were left with him. And he was very aggressive and very controlling and a sociopath,
Right.
if I could diagnose him from afar. So nobody could, and they were children.
Yeah.
You can't ask a child to
Yeah.
stand up for a child, no matter what. So if anyone listening out there feels, and I've had this conversation with my other brother who was witness because I told him this.
How old were you when you told him?
The irony is that I told him when I was 7, and he told my mother, and then my mother had a nervous breakdown, and the conversation never went any further.
Jeez.
So he holds guilt about having had information and not being able to get me help. But what I say to him, and what I say to any other person out there that was in that position that couldn't help your own sibling, your own parent, somebody, it's not you have no power. You are a child. And unfortunately, you are in a position to do that, to be a witness. But you have absolutely no responsibility. Please, please let go of that, because that's enough to ruin someone's life. The guilt of not having stopped something, especially if it's your youngest sibling, I think that paid a very, very high, my brother paid a very high price for carrying that guilt.
Do you and that brother have a good relationship
Excellent.
today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I have 2 brothers
Right.
left. I have an evil brother I don't hang out with. I have one brother who is deceased, the Air Force brother.
Okay.
And then the 2 other brothers love him to pieces. They love me. They
Okay.
understand me. And they support what I'm doing and what I'm saying.
Right. Well, one of the things you're doing is you have started a website, a community really, called 2 Moms, 2 Kids.
Yes.
Where you blog and you post and you video about real issues that affect parents today because of the fact that you have 2 kids
Yes.
in a relationship with 2 moms.
Yes.
How is
I'm
that?
not in a relationship with 2 moms. I am one of 2
She is
moms.
one of them. I was going to say, things are getting
Wow,
creative
this
over
is-
here.
I'm going to have to change that name.
What inspired you to start 2 Moms, 2 Kids?
Well, I knew I had this story to tell first of all. And I wanted to be able to do it in a way, first of all, I have a PhD in education. I have a master's degree in developmental psychology from UCLA, both from UCLA, and I have a degree in child development. So I've always been invested in children and research and psychology. Like, that's my thing, to understand myself, to understand my family, to understand dynamics. But what I did not want to do is I didn't want to just have this conversation, as they say in the ivory tower, where it's just academic language back and forth and academic journals. I wanted to get this information, my story, to the masses. I wanted to figure out, how could I inspire people? How could I show them the light at the end of the tunnel? And I felt like this was the way. Social media, this is the way. Have a conversation, invite people to engage. And today, I go to my Facebook, which is 2 Moms, 2 Kids, and people make comments on my videos. I engage with every single person, whether it's just me saying, I'm so sorry that this is your story too, or I've had other people actually reach out to me and have conversations via telephone, and they say, thank you, help me just have that conversation with my kid. I just didn't have the words. And then to just support, it's incredible.
It's absolutely, and you've taken something that could have been catastrophic had you let it be. Absolutely. And you really have transformed it. What are your thoughts? You touched on social media, and I really want to make this point because someone made it to me last week, and I think it's genius. We see Hollywood really kind of coming apart at the seams right now, old Hollywood. And it sort of started with, Bill Cosby a few months ago, but no one really took that seriously because he's almost 80. And that sort of, and then of course we had, Donald Trump and some of the comments he had made during his campaign,
and continues
to make, that really were sort of pushed under the rug. But it really has been since this Harvey Weinstein thing came out, and then all of the fallout, and you're seeing it every day. James Toback, and as I said, Brett Ratner, most recently Kevin Spacey.
And Dustin Hoffman, which I was shocked to hear.
And Dustin Hoffman.
It just hurts to know.
And you think these guys are good guys, but it has been so pushed under the rug because not only were these men in power, but they also had influence on the men in power who controlled the media.
Exactly.
Right? So even if people tried to come out...
How about period? Men in power were able to silence others.
And now with social media... We no longer are at the mercy of the 5 big print magazines or the 5 big newspapers or the 5 big TV networks. Somebody with a social media handle can get online and share their story, and you see it coming out and coming out and coming out. So the world is definitely going to be affected by this.
I think the greatest tool that we have had to date is social media, and the fact that almost everyone has a phone, and even those that don't have phones, they get phones donated to domestic shelters so that everybody has a voice. And I think that's what's so critical. The fact that someone can post something, and just to say, people have posted things before and then they just get attacked, or they get, the haters, as they say. But right now we all have this voice, and I think it's extremely powerful. I think that these men that are going down at this time, I think the consequences is a great collateral damage. I think that these men have families, and that they have children, and that they have all these layers, and they are now forced, and I say amen, to be accountable for their behavior. Because guess what? The game is over. Like, we are not going to allow you to use your power, your influence, your money, your position to bully and criminally. These are criminal behaviors as well as inappropriate behaviors, criminal behaviors towards others. And the fact that there are witness, when I talk about bearing witness, just like witnessing an assault, a car accident, like the person that witnesses that has just as much chance of being traumatized and affected by that than the actual person who was in the accident. Same thing. Like, if you have been holding a secret for your boss because every day at 12 o'clock he has a little visitor that's not his wife, then you know what? That's not fair. That's not fair of that boss to put you in that position. If you have to hold secrets, at work,
Right.
in a relationship, at home, there is a problem.
But the problem goes back to security, I think, because if you're holding this secret for your boss who's having these little visitors at noon, you're probably doing that because you're reliant on that job.
But that's
so
my
how
point.
do you
Yeah.
speak up, right?
So that's my point. The
Because
point
I'm
is-
sure there's, I'm sorry to interrupt you, I'm sure there's a ton more people that have borne witness to some of this behavior that still are not talking up.
So here's what happens. When there's, just like the bully, just like that same dynamic of the power and the perceived powerless person, is they are all feel indebted to this one person. They feel loyal. They feel like this is where I get my money. This is my job. And what I'm saying to those people is now is the time. There's no better time in our history to stand up to that person and say, my integrity is more important than that money I make, that position I hold, because I want to set examples for my children, for my children's children, and I want to be an upstander, not a bystander, just watching what's happening. I want to stand up and say, stop.
Well, let's hope that more people stand up. What I want to ask is, you get people like Dustin Hoffman who came out and said, this is not reflective of who I am.
Of course, how do you detach? You can't detach that.
You
Your behavior is tied to who you are. Who you are is based on how you act. He has had permission somewhere along his life that says your statements, your commentary, your oodling and touching and talking to women like this, no one has reacted. So he's 80 years old now. What was so troubling to me, and I say this because I was that girl, is looking at a teenager's handwritten journal, talking about what he said, what he did.
Was this your journal, or are you
today.
talking about her journal?
This is the gal's journal.
Right,
who
the Dustin
is
Hoffman
17,
gal,
yeah.
right.
And just looking at her bubbly child, like that girl, like I can never do
Kind
this
of
big bubbly letters,
but a
really beautiful.
fairy taled it almost in her own mind, right?
How? What do you mean?
With her writing in her journal about the attention she was receiving.
Well, the conflict. I saw
Right.
the conflict
Okay,
immediately. Hey, anytime there's a 17-year-old girl or boy who's getting attention from an older person, guess what? That feels good to any human being. They are not at that moment deciding, ooh, this person is a predator. Oh my gosh, I have to reject his advice. It feels good because we don't assume that someone's going to take it to the next level until they do.
What do you think of Kevin Spacey, 26 years old, and making advances on the 14-year-old at the time?
I think it's repulsive. I think it has absolutely nothing to do with his gender identity or his sexuality to try to be a gay man. A gay man is a gay man. Gay men don't look for children, period.
Right.
We need to
Pedophile
break-
is different
yeah,
than
a
homosexuality.
pedophile and a
We've got to make
homosexual
that
male.
very clear.
That's-
Absolutely very clear. Come on now.
There's absolutely no blurriness. A predator and a pedophile is one category. A gay man is an absolutely another. They are not contaminated. Please don't contaminate them, because that just perpetuates the stereotypes that are out there about gay men. It's wrong, and we have to delineate the truth.
If you have some questions for Dr. Angelica today, you're more than welcome to join the conversation. We're talking about sexual predators and some of the fallout that happens if you don't address some of this. You can dial into us at 818-570-5085. Angelica, my question for you now is, you managed to get to a point where you decided you were going to address it. And did you do that with therapy? Did you do that? I mean, what was the click in your mind where you said, I no longer want to walk around with this secret, with this weight, with this guilt?
Well, I think I was 7 years old when I realized that I had a story to tell. And
At
I just,
7?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It was a very, very clear kind of time in my life where I knew I had to have a story. So I couldn't be, and when I was a kid, to be a drunk was bad.
Right, okay.
And I knew that people dismissed drunks.
Okay.
I said, okay, they say, just very dismissive. So I felt like somehow I couldn't fall down. I had to be straight and narrow, and I had to keep my life clean so that my story could hold truth, because I didn't want it to get contaminated or just pushed aside. Oh, es una borracha. Whatever she says doesn't make sense.
Right,
Whatever,
because,
like, oh, look, she's homeless, she's this, or she's a drug addict. I don't, because I feel like, even drug addicts and alcoholics, like, they have a story, and the reason they are hurting and drinking is because they're trying to bury that, But anyway, so I just had this idea. I got to be clean and sober and have a narrow path to get to where I'm going so that I could one day share my story. Was I afraid? Absolutely. I had a mother, I have family, I have
how did
brothers.
they take it when you started becoming vocal? I can't imagine you were the popular kid in the family, cousins, extended family.
No.
This is not stuff people usually cheer for when you're airing it.
Well, here's the thing. I had told my cousins when I was like 14 years old. I told a couple of them, just the girls. And then I had, already told my mother by this time. And, I have one brother who I just didn't want to hurt. So I didn't really get in detail with him. And to this date, we don't go into detail because he's a very sensitive person. And I feel like I don't want to traumatize him more than we've had enough. Thank you very much. But I was afraid. I was afraid my mother. Oh my God, I can do this when she's gone. I wanted everyone to die out first, and I can speak. But the truth is, I'm being forced now because of what's happening that I can't be quiet. And I've had some backlash. I've had some family that has been upset with me because they feel like somehow I've tarnished the name, our family name. And you know what?
Did that hurt?
Absolutely. I called my brother. This was last week or a week. I called one of my brothers crying, and I said, "Wow, look at this backlash." And I told him what happened, and he said, "I'll take care of it from here." And he really went toe to toe with this family member and said, "Please, this is my sister's story. It is not your story to tell. It is not your story. You might have feelings about it, and it is not my responsibility that you did not talk to your children about this. So if they're surprised at 30 or 25 about this reality, you have known all along. Why not capitalize on this and teach your children what's out there, what's been in our family? This is not just haphazard. This is clear. It's a person, it's a predator, and that is who we need to be conscious of, not all the outside influences. And just, we got to get real.
So it's nice that he came to your back with
Yes, he did, and he's very eloquent. And you know what? I think that him feeling that guilt and lack of being able to protect me
back then,
he really has stepped to the plate, up to the plate, and he is a true advocate of mine. And I am so grateful because it's lonely to be here. It really, really is, because it's tough stuff, and it means people have to take responsibility, and it means that people have to be honest. And I'm trying to be transparent so that I can be free and live a life of peace, truly.
Yeah. A life of peace is what everyone wants. We have a number of parents that watch this show. What are some signs that parents can look for? Like, we'll go back to Hollywood in a minute, but a lot of times we were talking about grown women, grown men. That's a little bit different than a child being preyed upon by a sexual predator.
Yes.
What signs can parents look for?
Well, first of all, you should know who's in your house. You should know your partner, your husband. You should know your wife. You should know your uncles, cousins, anyone that is in contact with your child. You should have a sense that, wow, I trust this person implicitly. If you have just a hint of like a little nauseous feeling, a little sick feeling in your gut, pay attention to that, because that to me is the best defense. That is a barometer of what is happening. That is that sixth sense that we talk about. That is mother bear or survival.
Right.
Pay attention to that. You don't have to negotiate that with the person, but just know that something doesn't feel right and go with that. So that means maybe your child's not in that person's care by themselves ever. Just you're better off being safe than sorry. So that's the first thing, is know who's in your, and when kids go to play dates and they're spending the night at someone's house, you have to know who's there. Please don't just give them a blanket, yeah, go spend the night. You have no idea who's there for their family members there, the gardener's there, the TV repair person is there. You have no idea who's there. That means you have no idea who has access to your child. Because can I just tell you that the difference, or not the difference, but a child can be assaulted subtly, quietly, and in front of other people. That sounds crazy.
It sounds a little bit crazy.
Because you would think the kid's going to scream, or the kid's going to jump, or the kid's going to say, "What are you doing?" But the way predators work is they're so smooth and so charismatic and so subtle that literally they could have a kid sit on their lap. They could rub up against a child and hold that child there, playfully tickling them until they,
Right.
have
Get what they need, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's even hard to say, but yeah. So it can happen very, very quickly. So be mindful of that. Second, you know your child better than anyone. Okay, keep this conversation. Tell your children, this is your penis, this is your vagina, this is your anus, this is the perineum, this is your nipple, this is the areola. Let them know their body.
I was going to say, what age should you start having that conversation?
As soon as they know how to talk.
Really?
Yes, it's
you
their
get
body. You
wow.
say elbow, you say nose, eyes.
Yeah,
It's a body part. Give it the name so that they know if something is bugging them, if whatever, that they can communicate. Mommy, my baba hurts, or that my this hurts, my that hurts. Just like, and then we just say, no, nobody gets to touch your body. No, that's yours. And you let them have their freedom with their body. And the moment you see that your child, something just isn't right, like that something, but be a parent. Swallow your fear, assert yourself, and check in with your kid. Hey, bud, what's going on? You look so down. What, maybe it's that someone kicked over their lunch. Maybe that they didn't get picked but ask the questions. Be mindful. Let them know that you care about every aspect of their life, that they can come to you with anything. My kids come, a hangnail. They're running. I think that they've lost their finger, and meanwhile it's like a hangnail. I appreciate that because I hope that they will have the freedom to come to me if they're really scared or really uncomfortable.
And my question about that, excuse me, my question there is, how scared are you as a parent as they grow? You have two kids. How old are they?
I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old.
Okay, so those are the ages where they're starting to want to get a little bit more of their autonomy to
Absolutely.
go, down the street to the store by themselves.
Well, I don't
How do you let them go?
How do you let them go is a really important question, but they start off with our neighbors, right?
Okay.
So it's the circle just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and I feel comfortable, and they know if I don't feel comfortable, sorry guys, Mama doesn't feel comfortable.
Right.
And no one gets to argue with me. All right, that's not
Right.
a negotiation.
Yeah.
They can ride their bike outside, but I also need to know where they're going and to how
Kind of
far.
set the boundaries,
it's just
right?
boundaries.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're going to push them. This is what I told my son the other day. I said, your responsibility as a child is to challenge me, is to push boundaries, is to get upset, is to do whatever you need to do that you feel compelled to do. And guess what my responsibility is? To be the parent, to hold the line. You can throw a fit, you can scream, you can want all you want, and if it doesn't fit with my values, with our family values, it just isn't going to happen.
Right. And it's good that you're being clear with him about that and not trying to suppress his urge to show you who he is turning into. Right? It's a tough line. I mean, again, and I'm not a parent, so I'm the last one that should be commenting on this. But I observe it with other people, and you see different parenting tactics and different parenting styles. But I think it's a fine line between allowing them to gain that sense of freedom while still keeping them reined in the way a parent needs to for a certain amount of time.
We want
right?
our kids to be respectful, but if they can't say no to us, how in the hell are they going to say no to a stranger who is soliciting them for something where they wouldn't feel compelled, like I did, to respect my elders and to do as I was told.
Right.
Those two sayings or maxims or whatever the hell they are that have been embedded in our brains need to be removed strategically, because I want my children to stand up for themselves. I want them to know what feels right and what doesn't feel right. I want them to be angry about injustices. I want them to, we're helping them be human beings and fired up, and I want them to be these characters. How could I then have a repressive household where they're not allowed to challenge me?
And then expect them, right, to go into the world and just become sheep, right?
Please, that's so easy.
Exactly. I want to go back to men in power for a minute. Why do you think these men in power really risk and are willing to risk their careers, their reputations, their integrity for a cop in a field somewhere in a corner. Like, that's what I don't get.
Well,
right?
I think it's a psychological issue.
Okay.
Definitely. So this is
With them.
With them.
Okay.
The idea that, and what's interesting is that so many people we give power to, just like, as an example, I have to do it, sorry, our president, okay? He is in the most powerful position on the globe.
Arguably, yeah.
Right?
Arguably in the
In
globe.
the globe.
Yeah.
And his behavior is that of someone who is so powerless that he has to act out.
It's
And
called
that he-
Twitter.
Yeah, but he feels compelled to have to say it and compelled to have to do it. So a calm, confident person, man or woman, doesn't have to do that to get attention, to command power, to
A truly confident person,
yes.
right?
So so when I think of the Weinsteins and all these people, is that there must be in their psyche, and we don't know them. I'm not
Sure,
a therapist,
right,
by the way.
yeah.
I'm not a clinician, but here it goes. People that do this want power. They feel powerless. Now you say, how is it possible that Weinstein feels powerless? No. This is not powerless in the financial world and the movie world. It is powerless in the Harvey world. As Harvey, as a kid, somewhere he felt, whether he was fat, whether he was ugly, whether
Well,
he was
and
this,
the thing with Harvey,
that's
right,
the power.
is, the sexual allegations came to light and the sexual harassment, which, absolutely needed to come to the forefront. But I had also read that he was just generally an angry, mean person. For example, he would stay at the Peninsula Hotel, he would order room service, and if the room service was late, he would literally knock the tray
So
off
what
of
does
the
that say
delivery
about his-
guy.
but what does that
why
say?
does right to
What
that
does it
point?
say? That
Right?
Harvey is an angry, repressed, powerless man. I mean, that's what he gets reduced to, because his behaviors are that of a emotionally retarded, and I use that word technically like as in not developed, okay? Stunted, shall we say. These men have been stunted emotionally. And yes, that's you, Dustin, and yes, that is you, Harvey, and yes, that is all of you predators. You have been stunted emotionally, and that is why you seek so much to control and to power and to dominate another. It's sick, you need help, and all you can do is take responsibility, be accountable, show some fucking remorse. And that is when recovery happens. But until then, if you are going to say, well, it's because I was struggling with my being, there are no excuses.
No excuses.
No excuses for mistreatment at all.
Now, how do we as a society, because this isn't just happening in Hollywood, this is happening in the tech world, this
Everywhere.
is happening in politics, this is happening, as you say, in every community around the world. How do we, is this ever going to go away?
I say the more we talk about it, if we can challenge our parents and the men out there and the women out there to have a dialogue of what is appropriate, what is not appropriate, what is flattering, and what is not flattering.
But haven't we had these conversations
haven't.
before?
No,
like
no,
you
no.
go back to the Woody Allen days in the 70s.
No, well, it didn't sink in, okay? It didn't sink in because this is a daily thing. This is in your family. This is how you treat your wife. This is how you communicate with your daughters. This is how you communicate with your sons. If you let them believe that boys will be boys, I hate that phrase.
No locker room talk, right? Like, honest to God.
What a setup. What a setup for them and for the girls. If you teach mutual respect, regardless of gender, to your children, that your body and their body, everyone has their own body, and you have absolutely no right to touch their bodies, to intimidate them, this is basic language that we teach our children in preschool. Hands to yourself, hands and bodies to yourself. Right. But there has to be a consequence.
Well, there seems to be, a consequence that's coming to light. You see, Kevin Spacey's been stripped of his award. He was going to be getting an Emmy, was it?
I don't know.
I think, yeah, he was going to be getting an Emmy, and
none of that stuff matters. I mean, he needs to be all these.
Was it an Emmy or was it an Academy Award? My bad. My bad. But anyway, he's been stripped of
Help
something.
us out. Send us, call
send
us,
us a
tell
note,
us what
tweet
it is
us.
gonna be.
Yeah, well, we don't have our
Regardless,
phones around
these
us.
men, it's almost like the military. They need to
Yeah.
be ripped down, leveled to being human, and re-educated on how to engage with people, how to come from a place of love and respect, as opposed something you take. We don't take people.
But can that be taught at 70 years old? Or are they just a
No,
lost
no,
cause
no,
now?
Hell no. My mother was 70 years old. She used the word joto, which means faggot, okay? That word does not sit well with me. I do not use, I'm a lesbian. Hello, mother. And so I said to her, she's 70 years old, I said, Ma, ¿cómo vas a hablar así? No digas eso. You don't say that. And she goes, go teach it to your children. Don't teach to me. She was like, as if
just
she
like
gets to get away with that.
And
I
you're
said, no,
thinking,
no. You are my mother. You may not use that word. I am a lesbian. Okay, that is offensive to me and to everybody else. And then she kind of, but don't ever think that. I don't give people old age as like your
right, it's your
license.
pass, your green card, right?
Please.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no way. I say you challenge them into the death. Okay, just like the guy that's dying on his bed who's pinching the nurses.
Right.
I say slap the fucker's hand and get someone else in there.
Right.
Do not take abuse from anyone, whether they're drunk, belligerent, ill, dying, whatever. Do not take it. Do not sign up for it. Nobody signs up for it. Don't even suggest it.
Well, I'm hoping that all of this, these conversations that are being had are really helping to wake up society. I got to be honest with you, I don't know, because I think there is going to always be I'm hoping there's a shift, and I know that the world really is fiending right now for a little bit more female DNA in positions of power.
Amen.
It's still
and women of color
and women of color,
please.
Yeah, absolutely. Angelica, if people want to hear more from you, where can they go?
You could go to my website, which is 2moms2kids.com. Also, I have an Instagram, 2moms2kids TV, Facebook, 2moms, and this is the number 2, by the way, 2moms2kids,
right.
Facebook, and then Twitter as well. So you will find me out there. I have bright red hair. You can't miss me.
Well, we don't want to miss anything you're doing, because it's great. I want to commend you for having the courage to come forward with this, and also for your willingness to help educate parents and educate society generally. Last parting words for anyone listening who may have been a victim themselves and who may be still holding on to the guilt and the shame. What do you
say,
suggest?
first of all, if you're in an abusive relationship, if you're not safe in your own home, find a shelter. There are resources out there for you. If you are living your life and in suburbia and you're doing just fine until all this news broke, and now you're on your knees in the fetal position crying because you have all those memories back, get help. Talk to someone. I will promise you, I'm 47 years old. I was raped at 5, as I said, so it's been 42 years. It is still painful, but I can talk about it today. I'm not buried by the shame and the guilt of it. And I can help other people just like you can, because there is a community of us out there that have been brutalized by other human beings. And collectively, we can help each other and carry each other to a better place, one of peace and one of confidence. And you get to have your body back. You get to have your brain back. You get to have peace. I promise you that. But you gotta get help. Nobody can do this alone. If you're shooting heroin because you're so fucking sad and dark about what happened in your life, go get help. Because trust me, people aren't shoving needles in their arm because their life is grand and because they feel amazing. It's because they're hurting, and we need to help those that are hurt.
Step one place to go get help. Do you call?
I say RAINN, RAINN,
Okay.
is like the hub of all help for sexual abuse or rape. And if you are ever raped, you go to the Santa Monica Rape Center or to a hospital. You make sure that you are with someone who can be kind and loving and attentive and help you, and you do whatever you have to do to take care of yourself. You don't have to press charge. You don't have to do anything but just take care of yourself, because you are the number one here, whether you're 15 or if you're 75. you take care of you. That's it.
Well, we thank you for, again, bringing that to light and reminding people that you can't be scared to stand up for yourself and have that integrity of self and want to move into a place where you're living a better life for you, because I'm a big believer in when you feel good, it permeates to the people around you, and, it's sort of that ripple effect.
And you don't need to convince anyone, all right? I believe you. You know your story. You don't argue about convincing when it happened, how it happened, what day. None of that stuff matters. Matters it happens, and you're ready to get better. It's the best gift.
Do you see hope?
yourself.
Do you see hope for Hollywood before we close up?
I see hope for our society. I see hope for our children. I see hope for myself and for you.
Yeah.
I think that we all have a voice now, and we're going to use it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for using yours. Thank you for tuning in. This was LA40 this week, and we were here with Dr. Angelica Hernandez, big advocate, big supporter, and a friend of mine. I'm happy to have met you and have you on the program. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next week.
Thanks,
you. Guys. Bye-bye.
You're listening to LA40 with Katerina Cozias, only on LA Talk Radio.